So, hello everyone. Welcome to the SWE Match Fall Presentation Night. Is everyone excited? Or is everyone kind of confused because it's the first time we've done this? How's everyone feeling? If you want to put it in the chat or should I put up a thumbs up? Love that. Let's see. Katie has the little party face. Yes. Nervous. Yes. Cool. Love that. Well, you're going to do great. Woohoo! Yeah, so welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. This night has been a semester in the making. I am so excited for all of y'all to see what the participants have come up with. But before we get started, I just wanted to give a little explanation about what SWE Match is, because this is the first time that we are doing this program. So SWE Match is an all-female, all-virtual engineering competition at UTD that the SWE section here started. So how this works is that teams join and choose a problem that they're passionate about and deeply explore that engineering problem to come to a solution. So they are going to come up with a product that will solve that problem and talk about they'll start by researching and then designing. So that's kind of the two parts of the competition. And so this is the first part of the competition, which is the research part. So this is going to be in-depth looks at some really big problems in our society and the things that an engineering solution would have to solve those problems. So that's why we need all of y'all here listening and watching to participate in our projects and give feedback on our solutions. So be ready at the end of the presentations to ask questions, bring up concerns, just comment on it. We want this to be very interactive. We want to hear your thoughts on these problems because ultimately we've been working on a lot of these in kind of the vacuum of the competition. So we want to see how these solutions come into the real world, and we want to hear y'all's thoughts on that. So please, lots of participation is encouraged. Yeah, so like I said, this presentation night is the halfway point of the competition. So tonight you'll be hearing about all of the problems and solutions that the teams have come up with. And next semester, the participants will be using virtual tools to design their projects. So these are things like AutoCAD, maybe they're coding something, various like breadboard simulations and things like that. They're going to be using these tools dynamically to design their products. And so we will have a even bigger spring presentation night next semester. We'll get to see the solutions absolutely come to life, the products come to life. So without further ado, I do want to welcome the first team, Future Focus. If you guys want to start getting ready and I thank you so much for coming, and let's see the first presentation. And I'll stop sharing my screen and Future Focus can come on up.
Is everyone ready from Team 3?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are Future Focus, and my name is Kritika.
I'm Kriti.
I'm Varsha.
And I'm Neha.
Before we dive into our presentation, we wanted to take a minute to introduce ourselves. I'm Kritika, the team lead for Future Focus. So I'm currently a sophomore software engineering student at UTD. I live in Plano, Texas, which is around 20 to 30 minutes away from Richardson or UTD. And my interest specifically in the field of engineering, software engineering, and computer science would be learning more about human-computer interactions and human graphics. We also wanted to share a small fun fact about ourselves. And my fun fact is that I love anything food-related, specifically cooking, baking, and eating food.
My name is Varsha, and I'm a freshman majoring in computer science, and I live at home in Coppell, Texas, which is about 20 to 30 minutes away from UTD. And my interests are in data science and artificial intelligence, And a fun fact about me is that I used to be a volleyball coach. So I've been playing volleyball for a very long time and I love teaching kids volleyball.
Hey everyone, my name is Neha and I'm a freshman majoring in computer science. I'm from Austin, Texas, and my main interests in computer science are software engineering and machine learning. And a fun fact about me is that I like to play Tetris.
Hi everyone, my name is Kriti. I'm a sophomore computer science student. I currently live at home in Little M, Texas. My interests are in software engineering and artificial intelligence. And a fun fact about me is that I'm currently building a complete home gym.
So why Future Focus? So there are a couple of reasons as to why we chose to do this project. So all of us, Kritika, Neha, Kriti, and I, we all have a huge passion in incorporating technology into medical solutions. So we believe that because there are so many issues and struggles in the medical world, especially today during the pandemic, technology is a huge factor that can provide some sort of resolution. So as we were all thinking about the different things that we can do a project out of, we realized we wanted to do something different but something impactful. So Kritika, our team lead, actually did a project for the visually impaired in high school that is somewhat related to the project we are doing right now, except on a lower scale. So after doing some evaluation, we realized that doing a project for the visually impaired would be very impactful. So as we drive around Dallas or wherever you are, you will always see yellow signs on the road that say blind child area. Or sometimes when you're at the library, you'll see books in Braille, or we might know some blind kids that need some help at school. So people who are visually impaired live a completely different lifestyle, and we really want to help them. So globally, at least 1 billion people have a near or distance vision impairment that could have been prevented or is yet to be addressed. So that means 1/7 of the entire global population has a vision impairment, whether that's minor or major. So also in this graph, the number of individuals that will have a vision impairment is only going to grow. So by 2050, there will be about 13 million people who have an impairment. So these numbers show that people who have any kind of visual impairment need a lot of help, and that's where we come in. So there are some consequences that people who are visually impaired go through as well. So as you can see, being visually impaired can affect your physical health, mental health, and career growth. So these things are all things that we need to succeed in life, and people with this disability are essentially being stripped away from these opportunities to grow as a person.
So our main target audience for this project are people who have a loss of central vision, which means it creates a blur or a blind spot for them. Loss of peripheral vision, which is the inability to distinguish anything to one side or from both sides of your eye. Blurred vision, generalized haze, extreme light sensitivity, and also night blindness.
So after doing a lot of research, our team decided that we wanted to deliver a product that would allow users to do not just one, but multiple useful things with the device. We derived inspiration by looking at some existing devices on the market that also help the visually impaired. One example is the Mini Guides device, which helps visually impaired people locate and detect obstacles, such as fences, poles, doors, walls, etc., to help protect their safety. It's a fairly simple handheld device and it doesn't incorporate a headset. Next, we have the Iris Vision, which is basically a VR headset into which you can place a smartphone to view your surroundings. One helpful feature on the Iris Vision is bubble view magnification, which allows for easier reading because you can zoom in on text. Moving on, the Soundscape app by Microsoft uses a stereo headset to allow a person with blind or low vision to use audio cues and hear where the landmarks are around them, which is really useful for someone who's trying to find their way around an unfamiliar place, like a new city. Last, we'll look at My Eye 2, which is a pair of glasses with an attachable camera on the side. This device includes a lot of helpful features, like color detection and face recognition, that can help visually impaired people engage with other people and their environment. Overall, we took inspiration from these products and incorporated many of these features into our product to create something phenomenal.
Now our device. So the device we're going to create, Future Focus, is a cardboard headset and an app with 4 modes: night vision, zooming in and out, reading mode in black and white, and text to speech. So the user would put on the headset with the phone inserted into it, and they will be able to select options on which mode they want to use.
So, with Future Focus, the visually impaired population will be able to live independently and have access to a broader range of activities, such as driving, reading, and playing sports. Our product aims to not only help improve vision, but also improve the quality of life for those who are visually impaired. Nearly 1 billion people in the world live with a visual impairment, and glasses are often not adequate for addressing the great variety of eye disorders, such as trouble seeing at night. Another thing that we took into consideration is the fact that visual disabilities affect low-income populations at disproportionately higher rates. According to the National Federation of the Blind, 27.7% of Americans who have a visual disability live below the poverty line. We strive to create a product that is accessible and affordable to all in need. Looking at some of the prices of similar products on the market, we can see that Iris Vision and My Eye 2 retail for around $3,000, and New Eyes retails for around $6,000. We are aiming to create a product that can be sold for as low a price as the Google Cardboard. So essentially, we're looking to get as close to $10 to $15 range as possible while still providing the best experience possible. We also want our product to be accessible to everyone. So along with lowering the cost, we're also providing a range of modes and making the device easy to use and wear. This headset and app combination will have 4 modes: zooming in and out, reading in black and white, text to speech, and night vision. First, with the zooming in and out feature, the user will be able to click a button on the phone that is in the card, which allows them to zoom in and out. And this is helpful to users because they can make the adjustment from reading an article to looking far away outside. For reading in black and white mode, the whole view within the headset will be in black and white, and this helps make text easier to read than colored text, especially for people with color blindness problems. With the text-to-speech function, you have the option to select some text and it will read it out loud for you. This can be anything outside, like a sign or anything in a book or a laptop. So last, for the night vision feature, this will be especially helpful for people who have night blindness. With this mode, the user will be able to see objects more clearly at night or in dim or dark places, and this can really help protect the safety for those who have night blindness.
With our Future Focus product, we are mainly helping the users with the small activities they do throughout the day. For example, if a young girl with night blindness is at a restaurant and they are sitting outside, then they could use the night vision mode. She could also use zooming in and out feature if the text on the menu is too small, and use the black and white mode to see the words clearly. If she can't read, then she could select the text and use the text-to-speech mode. So the person wouldn't be wearing this device 24/7. This product is different than normal glasses because of the 4 modes that we have. We have future goals for this app as well as updates, which Kritika will talk about later on.
When we were thinking of project ideas, as a team, we knew that our interests focused on combining our knowledge of engineering to try to solve a problem in the medical field. Initially, or as you can see, with our first 4 tries, we wanted to create an app that helps the visually impaired navigate a path easily by alerting them if they are close to an object. We stumbled upon numerous problems with our first 4 ideas, which led us to come up with our 5th idea, which we wanted to pursue. So for our first 2 ideas, they did not work out primarily due to effectiveness and cost. For our first idea, we wanted the app to alert users if there was an object in their path by using a sonar attached to a microcontroller, which sends distance data back to the app. This was not effective because a sonar cannot detect objects in a wide range, so it might not pick up all the objects in the path. Also, the user would have to walk in a linear manner without any incline or decline for the sonar to work. In the real world, this isn't very realistic. For our second idea, it was very similar to our first idea, but we wanted to use a 360-degree camera instead. The reason why we didn't choose this idea was because of cost. 360-degree cameras are very expensive, and they're around $300 to $500 for one camera, and we wanted our product to be easily accessible by anyone. For a third idea, we chose to use the phone's camera instead of an extra hardware component, like the first two ideas. The main limitation of this idea was that if you don't angle your head correctly or if you walk too fast, the camera might not be able to detect the objects in the path. We also started thinking about hands-free options. So as you can see for the third idea, we thought of using a cardboard headset to place the user's phone, which would make it like a VR headset. And for our fourth idea, we wanted to use a GPS tracking system and a map software instead of a phone camera to help users reach their final destination. So a user would place their phone onto the cardboard headset and then use the app as a VR map to go to their destination. This is similar to using a GPS in a car, but you're walking instead. The reason why we didn't pursue this idea was because of safety concerns. Since the user would be wearing the headset at all times until the final destination, it would be extremely dangerous if the map software wasn't updated or if there was construction somewhere. Furthermore, it is not recommended to wear VR headsets for a long time without a break. So this could strain their eye, which would make their visual impairment even worse. And I will be discussing our fifth idea on the next slide. So in the end, we wanted to pursue our fifth solution, which is to create a VR Android app paired with a cardboard headset to help the visually impaired read easier. There are two main components of our project. The first being, we are going to create an app with 4 different reading modes, as mentioned before. This would, once again, include text-to-speech, night mode, black and white mode for better contrast, and a mode for easy magnification of text. Our second component will be a VR headset that we will build ourselves. Unlike the Google Cardboard headset, our headset will have spaces near the buttons of the phone so that the user can easily access them. We are planning on using the volume up and down buttons to switch between the modes and long pressing the volume up and down button to increase the volume for the text-to-speech option and adjusting the magnification for that mode. And these are the 3 reasons why our solution is better than what is currently available on the market. First of all, it's cheaper because you will only need to pay for the headset, which we're planning on making out of cardboard. As mentioned before, current solutions to the problem we are solving are pricey and have ranges in the thousands, such as the Iris Vision, which is currently in the market. So in the market, solutions typically range from $1,000 to around $8,000. Ours will be around $10 to $15, similar to the Google Cardboard. Our solution is also compact, so the user will only need their phone, which they will most likely have, and also the headset, which can be folded for storage since it's made out of cardboard. Finally, our solution is convertible. Instead of using different devices, users will utilize 4 different reading modes with 1 device. And these are our future goals, which we would like to implement after we get our basic app created. We want to add more modes based on user feedback of the app after we've done testing. We also want to account for notifications and allow the user to interact with the notifications that they receive while using the VR app, such as text messages and calls that they might receive. Instead of changing the modes through the phone buttons, we also want to look into changing modes using voice command, which is another future goal. And finally, we want to expand our apps to different platforms such as iOS.
So this is our projected timeline for next semester. As soon as we come back from winter break, we're going to start doing front-end development for our mobile app. This will run until the end of January, and we're also going to start looking at existing headsets and start designing our cardboard headset. And I'll talk more about what technologies we're thinking of using in a future slide. The next month, we're going to start working on backend and getting our first 2 modes to work. We're also aiming to complete the design for our headset by this time. And this will likely run until the end of February. In March, we're planning to finish our backend code and our last two modes, and also finish up our front end. And this is likely when we will most likely be focusing on creating a tutorial for first-time users and adding finishing touches to our app. Lastly, in April, we are going to start testing our app, and if everything is completed, then we can look into our future goals that were presented earlier and start making the final presentation and putting everything together. For manufacturing and distributing, we are mainly selling the cardboard headset, and the users will be able to download our app from their phone. For the headset, we want to advertise and sell our headsets in stores, specifically around pharmacies and inside vision centers, because it is a medical device that is used for vision. We would also like to ask hospitals and companies that make medical devices and see how they distribute their products. So some technologies that we brainstormed so far for front end are Figma, which is a browser-based UI design application tool, Framer, which is mainly a prototyping tool, and Adobe XD, which can also be used for design. Because our app is going to be a VR app, we're looking into using Unity to create a virtual environment and using the Google Cardboard SDK because it is a beginner-friendly tool and it comes with basic VR capabilities. So this is kind of just a rough sketch of what our app will look like. We are thinking of having big font so that it's easier for people to read the instructions. And for first-time users, we are going to add in a tutorial in the beginning to walk them through our app. And once they get to the home screen, they will be able to pick a mode and put their phone in the headset to get started. Thank you for listening to our presentation. Are there any questions?
Great presentation, you guys. You and I definitely see eye to eye. Okay, so I will be moderating the discussion. So if anybody wants to like raise their hand or turn on their audio or send a question or comment in the chat, we'll get to those. We'll talk through those. I want to hear what y'all think. Or while people are kind of formulating thoughts, I do have a question. So why did you choose cardboard as the material for your device? Like, why not something a little bit more durable like plastic?
So we chose to use cardboard because, as I said before on the slide, we want it to be easily compressible so that users can use it anywhere that they go. So they'll only need their phone and the headset, and we wanted the headset to be foldable so they can put it in their backpacks or like purses or anything that's like easy to like carry around. We thought that plastic might not be easily like you might not easily be able to store plastic compared to cardboard, and cardboard is a cheaper option.
And to add on to that, you can definitely like recycle cardboard way easier than plastic, and plastic is much more harmful for the environment. So we were concerned about that too.
Very fair, very fair. Does anyone else have any questions or comments or anything like that? Want to say about future focus? All right then. Okay. Well, thank you, team, for coming up and presenting, and we will move on to the next team, which is Smart Brain Box. Woohoo! So Smart Brain Box. Oh, yeah. If you guys have any final words, please. Final remarks. Not words. Remarks.
Thank you so much for listening to our presentation. We hope you guys like it.
Yeah, thank you.
Whenever Smart Brain Box is ready.
Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Is everyone ready?
I'm good. I'm ready.
Gabrielle,
Hello, everyone. And we are Team 1, and the project we have been working on is the Smart Brain Box. To get things started, we can go ahead and let you all meet our team. My name is Gabriela Sainz. I am a computer science major. I am a sophomore, and I am interested in web development, artificial intelligence, and game development.
My name is Sarah Tao. I'm an electrical engineering sophomore, and I'm interested in power, robotics, and aerospace.
Hi, I'm Aishani Dieserkar. I am a junior majoring in computer science, and I am interested in web development, cloud computing, and cybersecurity.
Hi, I'm Geetika Vidula, and I am a sophomore in computer engineering. I'm interested in UI and UX design, machine learning, and circuitry.
All right, so let's get started with the problem. Today, the global population is 7 billion people, but it is projected that by 2050, we will reach approximately 10 billion people on the global population. Now, the current global agricultural and food system practices have already approximately reached their capacity, and we produce enough food today to feed about 10 billion people, yet at least 3 billion people suffer from micro and macronutrient deficiencies, and 1.2 billion people are food insecure, and 800 million go to bed hungry. So we need to come up with a solution that transforms our food systems and global agriculture so that we can optimize our land use and come up with a food system that can support everyone, especially in 2050 when we have about 10 billion people in the world. So let's start off with some statistics. Over 25% of humanity fails to receive adequate nutrition, and the annual cost of malnutrition is $3.5 trillion, and that doesn't even account for diseases caused by obesity, such as cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes, which cause another $2 trillion per year. Along with that, in developing and third world countries, about 70% of the population make their living through the growth of plants and agriculture. So 1/3 of all human consumption, of all human food produced, is lost or wasted. And the food production and consumption create tremendous detrimental effects on the environment. If food waste were a country, it would be the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases behind the US and China. Moreover, the global food system contributes about 35% of global greenhouse gas emissions, of which 25% is due to agriculture, forestry, and other land uses. The remaining 10% is due to food system activities after primary production, which means food systems like cooking, refrigeration, and storing food. So let's get into a little bit of the background of this problem. What exactly about global agriculture and the current food systems are causing these challenges? So traditional farming and global agriculture has a tremendous negative effect on the environment, and there are 5 main challenges that we would like to tackle. The first one is soil degradation and erosion. Soil degradation and erosion, many forms. Degraded soil is very unproductive soil that reduces the nutritional quality of the crops that we produce. It's estimated that by 2050, we will have removed the equivalent of 150 million hectares from crop production, which is approximately 10% of the global farmland. The next challenge that we have to discuss is water depletion and pollution. Traditional farming is the leading cause of water pollution and accounts for 70% of ground and surface water withdrawal. And as we all know, water is essential to all life, and it's becoming scarcer in some parts of the world. So the first effect that comes from the water depletion and erosion is increased pumping costs, and this will eventually lead to water becoming economically unreachable. This means that soon after that, there will be food shortages and water shortages, leading to a number of catastrophic crises in the political and global world. The next challenge that we have to talk about is the loss of biodiversity. So the survival of many species, such as soil microbes, plants, insects, fish, other animals, highly depend on our global agricultural processes. And more than just their intrinsic value, these species are highly valuable to our ecosystem. But our global agricultural practices threaten all of these species. And if this continues, then this could lead to a high volume of human food insecurity. The next challenge is that food systems today contribute enormously to global greenhouse gas emissions. In particular, it's the leading cause of deforestation and forest degradation, primarily through land use changes and forest lands which are converted for agricultural uses. The damage is that it harms the ability for Earth to sequester carbon from the air. And then finally, the last challenge that we want to tackle is food loss and waste. Food loss and waste have major negative environmental impacts, as wasted food wastes natural resources as well as also contributes to the global gas emissions. So these are the 5 challenges that we want to tackle in the traditional farming sector. And if we can come up with a solution that incorporates all of these challenges, then I think we can really take food into the future.
So you guys are probably wondering, why did we choose this topic to tackle? So Greta Thunberg once said, "You must unite behind the science, you must take action, you must do the impossible, because giving up can never ever be an option." So this sentiment inspired us to tackle the problem of climate change, starting from the homes of the population. Making this type of system efficient will promote the idea for many to implement in their backyards to aid the mission towards helping climate change. So what is hydroponics and aquaponics? Aquaponics is a form of agriculture that combines raising fish in tanks with soilless plant culture. The nutrient-rich water from raising fish provides a natural fertilizer for the plants, and the plants help to purify the water for the fish. It can be done anywhere, providing fresh local food that is free of pesticide, herbicides, and chemical fertilizers. It's safe, easy, fresh, and has no growth hormones and antibiotics that could be harmful for the fish. Now moving on to hydroponics. Hydroponics does not rely on fish for nutrients or use of soil, unlike aquaponics. Fresh water is mainly used, and there is a root support in place to avoid crowding and lack of stability. In this system, plant food must be included in water instead of fish waste, as discussed in aquaponics.
So aquaponics is basically the process of creating a nutrient solution from fish waste, and hydroponics is how you choose to distribute that waste to your plants. So these are 4 different systems that we are considering in our solution. So the first one is called a drip system, and in this type of system, there is water constantly passed at a low pressure that waters the tips of the plants. The nutrient film technique, which is next year, is very similar to the drip system. It's different in that it's stackable and it takes advantage of gravity. So it is more of a space saver solution. And then there's deep water culture. With deep water culture, the reservoir is constantly filled with water. So it takes up more space. It is a heavier and a solution, and it is a system that needs more upkeep. And then there's an ebb and flow system. And in the ebb and flow system, the tank is periodically flooded and drained. So this is probably the system that requires the most structural integrity, because it has to hold the weight of the plants and the water and be able to accommodate the drainage. So we are considering these 4 systems because a combination of these systems is what is most viable, I guess. It allows for a grower to have different plants, to have different setups, and to really maximize the area in which they are growing the food.
Specifically in the scope of an aquaponics system, we must consider the possible and most feasible plumbing systems, those being the one-loop system and the split flow system. In simple terms, the one-loop system works how it sounds, with a single loop of water that flows directly through the fish and the filtration and the plants in a continuous loop. The advantage of this system is the simple setup that is formed from this circuit. However, there is often many compromises that have to be made when it comes to water quality. Particularly, it is difficult to manage the pH and the nitrogen levels in the water, meaning this system requires biofilters to help stabilize the water and is more labor intensive than would be desired. In the split flow system, a pressurized water line diverts water to the fish and to the plants. This means there's less unwanted contamination between the 2 water supplies, and the system is much easier to maintain. With the concept of an easy to maintain aquaponics system comes the idea of automation. In a system that has so many moving parts, it was instantly clear to us that a way to see exactly what was going on, record that information, and then analyze it for future use is necessary. Now, this idea could potentially be accompanied by the use of water flow sensors to measure how much water each plant area is receiving, pH sensors to monitor the pH levels of the water throughout the system to ensure it is safe for both the plants and the fish, microcontrollers to help process, record, and analyze the data that is received from the system, and a mobile application to make the management of the system and all the data that has been collected simple and efficient for all users.
Goals and visions. The implementation of our version of the Brain Box should increase the use of aquaponics in regular homes by making setup more efficient and to yield the most crops. In addition, making the box smart and having valves controlled by an app could make tending to the water from becoming dirty, and it'll become much easier to maintain the health of the tank due to prior detection of algae and toxic buildup.
After collecting our research, we came up with some strong potential solutions. The first of which is to focus only on the water distribution throughout the system by creating electric valves. Electric valves would be in the form of water flow sensors and pressure sensors, and would help record the water usage of the entire system, thereby perfecting the water usage and getting rid of excess wasted water.
Another potential solution that we thought of was Lego-style pipes. In a lot of aquaponic systems, pipes are usually used as a cost-efficient way to have multiple plants stored in one line, making watering much easier. So we thought using a more sturdier and secure alternative, such as a Lego-style pipe, could do away with the need of replacing pipes if they're broken and can do water distribution way easier and faster. As you can see from the diagram here, the Lego structure has adjustable canals that can be removable according to which plant is placed in the spot. So say the plant placed in spot A was bigger than spot B. So the canal for spot A would be bigger than the one in spot B, and they can be interchangeable depending on what plant you want to place there. And this helps with distribution of water for the specific type of plant, because a bigger plant would require much more water than a smaller plant. And this would avoid overwatering and just the production of nutrients and the spreading of all the substances that are needed for the plant to grow.
Another solution we considered was using microcontrollers and sensors to automate various parts of the system and to gain different data using those sensors. So there's this right here is a microcontroller. This particular system is set up to have a backup pump in case the main pump goes out. It is also set up to automatically feed the fish. It is set up to detect the growth of the plants and to turn off the lights when necessary. It also measures the intensity of the light. So this is a very advanced way of recording all of the data needed to be successful with your aquaponics system. So why is this important? So earlier we discussed all of the problems with traditional farming, and aquaponics addresses all of these problems. But in order for aquaponics to be widely adopted, it has to turn a profit. So most research right now, over 80% of aquaponics research is focused on making the system more efficient and more adoptable. So technology needs to be improved so that it can be more easily adopted by not only farmers, but everyday people in their backyards. So this is a picture of what we are working on. So this box here, this is the brain box. You can see it here in the middle. It's black. It has 4 pipes coming off of the end. And these 4 pipes are leading currently to different parts of the complete system. So if you look here on the left, that is an example of the nutrient film technique, hydroponic system. And in the middle, that black box holding all of the plants is an example of an ebb and flow system. And then on the right, this big jug at the bottom, that's actually the tank with the fish in it. So why do we want to make this brain box smart? Why do we want to automate it? We want to make it easier for people who want to have an aquaponics system in their backyard to make it more customizable so that it can meet their needs, so that they can have a variety of plants, so they can have a variety of systems, and make it easier for them to implement this kind of system.
So for our app aspect of the project, this is a quick snapshot of what the interface would look like when the agriculturalists would open up the app to check in on the watering schedule or needs to modify valve options. If you see here, there's a login page that will lead to more customizable options to manage valves and timings. Requirements. So we wanted to make our idea have a positive environmental impact, more efficient, and incorporate smart features. This includes avoiding soil degradation, greenhouse gas emissions, curb food waste, and automated, less labor-intensive aspects. So this would make the lives of the agriculturalists a lot more easier, and it would encourage more people to implement this in their backyards, because this is just such an easy way to start a system without having to use so much labor and having to think about so many aspects of it, since this is an automated box. So the general timeline. First, we will be defining where the system will work and its purpose. And this includes what the plants can grow, what environment, and how we can make it customizable to the agriculturalists. Next, we would choose a specific aquaponic or combination of aquaponic systems to work with for our smart brain box. Based on the system, we can create a design for the brain box and how it connects to the system itself. So the factors that should be considered include what type of valve we need to use and how many of those, the schematic of the filter that we'll use, so the fallen leaves that fall in the box won't clog up the pipes and hinder the water distribution, and how it'll be incorporated into the brain box itself. And what type of pumps we will use to create these and control the pressurized water will also be taken into account when we are designing the brain box. Lastly, we have the functionality of the app. So this monitors the pH, temperature, oxygen levels, and water levels, including the water pressure. In addition, it can also display the timing schedule as well as alert the agriculturalist to significant problems, repairs, or any statistics on how the plants are doing. The logistics of how to connect the app to the smart brain box and controlling the water flow when the valves open and close will also be discussed throughout the project.
With this project, we have a vision for creating a food system that diminishes the environmental damage of current agricultural systems, revives our natural resources, and combats climate change. We plan to do this by creating a smart brain box that can be customized to any aquaponics system. By doing this, we are taking steps toward creating radical change in society and implementing a system that is environmentally sustainable, helping to solve the climate crisis.
Their sources. Any questions?
Wow, y'all really planted the seed of an idea. So are there any questions out there? Again, put them in the chat, raise your hand, or just unmute yourself. I hear y'all's comments. Well, here, I have a question. So the smart brain box, are you planning on, is this supposed to be more of a consumer product that like individual could go, I want to have aquaponics in my backyard? Or is it more of a like large scale agricultural product? Like what was kind of your vision on that?
So while we were deciding about that in the beginning, we were, kind of thinking about what kind of audience the large scale product would appeal to, which would be farmers or people who have large farms in general. So obviously, since we don't have large farms to kind of test our theory during this kind of time, we kind of went with a consumer product that could be easily placed in people's homes, and it would kind of encourage people to take up this idea because it's just so efficient, and it doesn't require half the time and effort that you usually have to put on a non-automated system.
Great. Yeah, I mean that, and I was sitting here going like, man, I want like a little aquaponics thing in my backyard. So that's awesome. So Jenna asked, how do you think this system or this like change you're trying to bring about will long-term improve climate change?
That's a great question. So I think our vision for the future is that, for example, 2050, there will be 10 billion people on the planet. I think we imagine a future where people can consume healthy, nutritious foods at an affordable, sufficient, and diverse price where inclusive food systems enable enhanced livelihoods and the growth of fair economic opportunities for the entire food value chain.
Awesome. Yeah. So Krithika also has a question.
Okay. Hi. First of all, I would like to say I really enjoyed your PowerPoint, and like you guys said, it is a very relevant problem that we're facing today. So it's great that you guys are tackling that. I have two main questions. My first question is, do you guys have any competitors who are doing something similar to the three solutions that you mentioned in your PowerPoint? And the second question is, what is your general timeline of the goals that you wanted to accomplish next semester? Basically, will you be able to accomplish everything in one semester?
So I'd like to answer some of that question because that was some of my personal research. So mainly what we saw on a larger scale, or I would say more successful scale, was the use of microcontrollers to collect data. But even that combination of using like predictive models and using mathematics to predict the different things like what is optimal flow rate, all of these things, they actually haven't been combined with just the idea of getting alerts or automation of a feeder or things like that. So even that system that I showed, it's actually just very much a kind of on and off kind of thing, if else kind of coding. So there hasn't really been a combination that's more advanced than that. And as far as the brain box is concerned, its purpose is to allow more variety in your aquaponic system. So in general, aquaponic systems don't choose different types of hydroponics. So basically, if you want to have an aquaponic system, you choose one hydroponic system, and it limits the kinds of plants that you can have, and it limits how customizable it is. So for example, if you want to have an aquaponic system in your backyard, and depending on where you live, you choose one of those systems and you can only grow basil, you may not think that it's very worth it to you. So being able to grow a variety of plants, being able to take maximum advantage of your space, using something like this brain box is not something that we've seen. The most similar would be having various pumps and having various pipes going in all kinds of different directions, but no center of control.
Okay. Thank you.
I see, who's that? Oh, yeah, okay, Teresa has a question.
Hey y'all, I really enjoyed your project. I was super impressed with y'all actually making the box. So I was really impressed with that, and I learned a lot about aquaponics. My question is, I have one question and I have a follow-up question. So aquaponic systems, they run 24/7, like all the time, right, to maintain the plants and how they grow, correct? Okay, so how does that play into the part of electricity consumption and energy consumption and how that affects the environment?
So I can answer that as well. So the footprint is significantly smaller. In our research, the only real concern that we found was the producing fish feed, and on what kind of scale you would need to produce fish feed and that cost. Now, I will say that it is dependent on electricity, and that is something that we discussed. And when we were considering whether to make this a larger kind of industry solution versus a smaller, just in the backyard solution, we thought about that. We thought about having electricity kind of in the middle of, wherever farming is done. And so that is a consideration, and that did play in our decision to downsize. But the biggest issue with there being it being run by electricity, the only thing that is electrical in it is the pumps. So depending on how many pumps you want to use, depending on how strong of a flow you need, the energy consumption is really not that big, on that big of a scale. And also, if you choose to employ the use of the force of gravity in distributing all of the water, that takes away from it as well. The biggest concern with electricity is actually a power outage. So if you have a power outage and the flow of water stops, you can have that issue where your plants dry out. So, which is another reason to consider different types of hydroponic systems. The deep water culture system, for example, it has a reservoir that is regularly filled with water. So if your water all of a sudden, if you lost power, your plants wouldn't dry out because they would still be in water. So that's another reason to be able to have various systems.
And adding on, surprisingly, aquaponic systems use less water than any traditional agricultural system, because it recycles the water. It's like a little system, or like a cycle, in other words. So water resource is it can be reused, and it's more efficient in the long run.
And just to add on to what Geethika and Sarah were saying, this is not an all-encompassing, we're going to fix every single problem right now with this project. We're taking a step away from traditional systems and greatly reducing, like Sarah was saying, the electricity that we use it doesn't really have a huge impact, and the water consumption is greatly cut back compared to a traditional system. And so if we are targeting a regular household instead of big, huge farms, to show that everyone has a hand in making an impact and in this climate crisis.
I also want to mention that we did talk to someone who has an aquaponics system in their backyard, and he grows a majority of the food that him and his family eat, which was even more inspiring and amazing to us to actually see the food and to see that this is really something that we can accomplish. And this solution that we chose, we also felt that it's scalable. So if we are able to achieve, so at its core, we want to design this brain box. And then further than that, if we can make more of a system and have these Lego style pipes, if we can think about something to use other than electricity to power the pumps that we need, so we're planning on scaling it as much as we have time for.
Nice, thanks so much.
That's so interesting. You think you could fit one of those things on a college balcony? Like that's so crazy that it uses less water than traditional agriculture. That's wow. That's gnarly. It's amazing that we're like that. This is kind of like I'm just learning about this. This is so cool. But okay,
you can also.
No, go on. No, go on.
I was just gonna say you can also. We didn't really talk about it. Maybe it's a little. I don't know. But you can eat the fish as well. I mean, it's a little sad to talk about, but you can. You can eat the fish as well.
The fish are also reproducing.
Yeah, it's just many benefits. Just less water. Yeah.
We don't really think about it. Yeah, I mean, we don't really think about it, but our agricultural systems use up 70% of our ground and surface water, which is insane. With the aquaponic system, it just keeps going in the loop. It saves a lot of.
Oh, Neha has a question.
So I've heard about an aquaponics toolkit app, and I was wondering if you guys were familiar with that and how you can describe how your solution is different from that app.
So we were looking to incorporate electrical valves that can be controlled automatically through the app. So this app encompasses multiple different aspects, such as controlling the valves, having a timer schedule incorporated into it, and measuring pH levels and kind of just detecting anything that a normal agriculturist wouldn't detect upon first sight. So we were thinking about incorporating these different type of things all into one place as time allows us. So that's kind of what we were trying to aim with this app. So I mean, I don't know if that app is connected to a brain box, but we are also connecting it to this system that we've designed as well. So these go hand in hand. It's not just, we're just building this one box and then, hoping that it would, like automatically send water according to like a press of a button, but it also incorporates measuring different levels of nutrients that are being fed in the water, and just different aspects like that, so we can avoid long-term troubles as well.
I think something that we also considered while doing our research, we're looking at these electric valves and all these, any type of kit or anything that was geared towards aquaponics was pretty costly. And since we decided we were scaling this down and we wanted this to be for a typical household, we were trying to come up with ways to craft it on our own and make it, very affordable for the typical person, so that it's a nice, easy to use and not intimidating. Also, if it's in an app, it's very easy to use. If it's had a lot of moving parts in a typical kit like that, it's for someone that they're not going to want to go in there and see all of these parts, all of these, think it's like a huge engineering project. We want to make it easy for everyone.
Yeah, and I'm as Geetika said, I'm not exactly sure what app you might be talking about, but in what I experienced was more kind of like apps that help you keep track of your data, because I would say that most people that have an aquaponic system, they need an Excel spreadsheet or something, because there's just so much data that you have to keep track of. But at the heart of our solution, there is this brain box. So the app is to help us control the brain box and water flow. Anything additional is just, it's the icing on the cake. If we want to keep track of pH, if we want to keep track of the actual nutrient amount and how nutritious it is, and then furthermore, if we want to make predictions, if we want to predict At what point we'll have too many fish. The fish will have reproduced too much, and we have to do something about that. So predictive models and all of those things would be additional to what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it sounds like your app will kind of keep track of a lot of that data itself rather than having to like put it in a spreadsheet manually. So very cool, very cool. Well, thank you guys so much. We're gonna move on to the next presentation just to keep on the time schedule, you know. But thank you guys so much for coming up. Any final remarks?
Thank you for listening to the presentation.
Great. Well, then next is dissecting euphoria. So y'all get ready. Woot woot. Start whenever you're ready.
All right, hi everyone. So we are going to be dissecting euphoria and providing a new perspective on drug addiction. My name is Teresa Tai, and I'm currently a sophomore studying biomedical engineering.
My name is Jenna Kruger, and I'm a freshman studying bioengineering.
I'm Anna Miranda, and I'm a sophomore mechanical engineer.
And I'm Sanjana Chematuri, and I'm a freshman BMed major. Across the United States, there are approximately 21 million Americans who currently suffer from drug addiction. However, only about 10% of them get any sort of treatment.
So before we discuss what drug addiction is, it's probably best that we figure out what addiction is in general first. So addiction is when a person engages in an activity that is pleasurable and produces some sort of high, but cannot stop doing so, no matter if they want to or not. Thus, their health and well-being begin to suffer. But you probably already know that. You see, I feel like we've all been exposed to drugs in different ways, probably through the DARE program in school, where they showed us, don't do drugs, or this person did drugs and now they have no teeth, that type of perspective. However, we're hoping to show you a different perspective on drug addiction during this presentation. Specifically, we want you to focus on drug addiction as a biological process and medical disease, rather than the negative connotation of an inferior person who's addicted to drugs. So focusing on the biological perspective, drug addiction is when it is using a chemical substance to alter neurological processes in the brain permanently, specifically the process of neurotransmission. So what is neurotransmission then? Well, that requires some knowledge of the nervous system. So first, in your brain, when your brain wants to send a signal from one brain cell to another, it requires a chemical signal to move that information. That chemical signal is called a neurotransmitter. This is what drugs affect. Drugs do not affect the signals within a brain cell, but rather the transfer of information. So there are a couple ways that drugs cause you to get high. One is that they can mimic neurotransmitters and attach to receptors and amplify the effect of the normal neurotransmitter to create a high. Or they might attach to the neurotransmitter themselves in order to create that high as well. But most commonly, they deal with the process of reabsorption. So when your brain wants to send a signal across brain cells, normally it sends out a specific amount of neurotransmitters. Sends these neurotransmitters to send the signal and then reabsorbs them back. Because if you want your hand to raise, you only want it to raise once. You don't want to just keep raising your hand over and over again. So when you take a drug, drugs stop this process of reabsorption. So they trap these neurotransmitters inside your brain and continue the signal over and over and over again until you produce this high in your brain. Generally, the neurotransmitter that is affected is dopamine, which is the pleasure neurotransmitter. However, other neurotransmitters can be affected, like serotonin, which affects mood and stimulates your energy, or GABA, which is calming and relaxing, like when you smoke marijuana. So we've talked about how you get high from drugs, but then how do you get addicted? Well, this has to do with the process of receptors and the complement of receptors. This is specifically important for our project specifically and how we're going to diagnose drug addiction. So normally, when you take a drug, your brain doesn't just accept this overproduction of neurotransmitters or this overuse of neurotransmitters. It responds by reducing its complement of receptors that allows your brain to intake the neurotransmitters. And it does this so that you're not overwhelmed and you don't ruin your brain or have a seizure or even die, right? However, when you continually take drugs over and over, this process has changed because normally your receptors return to normal after you become sober. But if you use drugs over and over again, your brain begins to realize it can never predict when you are going to have the surge of neurotransmitters and take this drug. So it keeps your available receptors low. But that also makes your daily activities less pleasurable because you aren't accepting as many neurotransmitters throughout your life. And so psychologically with this, your brain begins to associate drugs with happiness because dopamine is a funny neurotransmitter since it creates a memory of the experience. It makes you want to seek out the drug again and again. And so you become more motivated to take the drugs and less motivated to do other activities like walking or eating or even breathing because your brain thinks, I get so much more happiness from taking drugs rather than socially interacting or talking with others.
So there are actually lots of different ways to map the brain and these processes in the brain that Jenna was talking about. So two of examples of this are electroencephalography and fMRIs. But for our project, we will be specifically looking at PET scans. And the reason we're only going to be looking at PET scans is because they measure the brain to a very high degree of sensitivity. They look at specific molecular concentrations. So in a PET scan, a patient is given a shot with a radioactive tracer. And so in the body, the radioactive tracer binds to glucose compounds, and they travel to parts of the body that require sugar to be broken down to carry out specific processes. So once the sugar has been broken down, the radioactive tracer actually releases a positron, which is then picked up by the PET scanner, and it is represented on this spectrum of colors. So as you can see, a red color represents a low amount of radioactive substance release, which means that there were already enough receptors in the area to carry out whatever process needed to be carried out. On the other side, blue and purple represent a high amount of radioactive substance released, which means that there weren't enough receptors in the area to already carry out whatever process needed to be carried out. So as Jenna said, usually when people are addicted to drugs, they increase their neurotransmitter, which then decreases receptors. So addicted brains will look a lot like the one on the right. So lots of purple and blue, whereas a healthy brain is one that'll look like the one on the left, which has red and is self-sufficient.
Now that we know what addiction is, how it happens biologically, and how we measure it, how do we go about treating it? Well, drug addiction is very tricky and a complex disorder to diagnose and treat. One instance that a patient is never going to appear exactly the same in the next. So treatments today intertwine both behavioral and pharmacological aspects. Now the top 3 treatments are behavioral therapy, case management, and general counseling. Behavioral therapy is strictly internal. It has nothing to do with the patient's family dynamics or their current economic status. It mainly seeks to identify and help change potentially self-destructive or unhealthy behaviors. Like Jenna mentioned earlier, when drugs are used, certain neurotransmitters are mimicked, ultimately changing the person's perspective of what a normal amount of pleasure is. Now, case management is a series of processes that assesses the patient's situation, developing a plan of action and implementing it, following up, reassessing, and hopefully closing the case where the patient is no longer receiving treatment and is officially in recovery. In the most extreme cases, crisis intervention may be used. The main advantage of case management is how adaptable it is. As I said before, addiction is super complex, and each patient is a brand new puzzle. Case management is probably the biggest tool that professionals use to battle the diversity they experience. Now, counseling is very broad and can be broken down into several different categories. The first category is cognitive behavioral therapy, which helps patients to recognize and change ways of thinking that have associations with substance use. This has a lot to do with the biological sense I elaborated on earlier. The next would be multidimensional family therapy, which helps to improve family function around the patient. Studies have shown that by developing a stronger support system at home, it increases the patient's desire to want to actually get better. Next, we have motivational interviewing, which maximizes the individual's willingness to change and make adjustments to behavior. And last, we have motivational incentives to help encourage abstinence through positive reinforcements and other external factors. For any form of treatment, acknowledgement and detoxification are always in the beginning stages of recovery. Now, acknowledgement is pretty well known. We hear it all the time. The first step to fixing a problem is to admit the problem exists. In fact, this is one of the core concepts of substance support groups, such as Alcoholics Anonymous. Detoxification, however, can manifest in one of two ways. Since self-detoxification is extremely difficult and requires a ton of self-discipline, it usually happens within a facility with the guidance of a medical professional. People detoxify by either going cold turkey, completely cutting the substance out of their lives, or in more severe cases, they slowly are weaned off of the substance over a gradual period. Now, the most common drug addictions in the US are tobacco, alcohol, and marijuana. The main reasons are the mild short-term effects, accessibility, and social acceptance. For decades, it's been known that drinking and smoking cause life-threatening diseases like cancer or liver failure. But the average person does partake in one of these things. For most people, a mild hangover or a sore throat are manageable, and the possibility of developing a disease is unlikely. Another problem is how socially acceptable they are. Alcohol and tobacco in the US are legal. In Texas, you can buy either of these things if you're 21 or over. Because these substances are made available to the mass, the amount of people susceptible to developing an addiction throughout their lifetime is fairly high. Marijuana is similar with one exception. It's still illegal. Although it's not sold in the traditional sense, marijuana can be locally grown and easily trafficked. Every person either knows someone who uses one of these substances or uses it themselves.
Emotional stress is a form of trauma in which there's actually a biological response to negative events and emotions. And this actually affects the brain's ability to then control its emotions and actions. So these individuals affected by this turn to substance use to try to negate these effects and decrease their anxiety. Certain communities are more vulnerable to developing addictions than others, and these are usually ethnic and racial minorities, as well as impoverished communities, and more specifically, the overlap between the two. There's no correlation between poverty and substance dependence, but low-income individuals are at a higher risk because of facing things like discrimination and stigma, in addition to not having access to equal resources. All this contributes to not being able to help these individuals before their substance use reaches a level at which going to a rehab facility is their only safe option for recovery. And this is supported by disproportionate statistics from a study that noted over the course of 5 years, 43% of incoming patients at rehab facilities were individuals from these demographics, despite them constituting a smaller percentage of the total US population at the time of the study. Overall, this leads to both an increase in the stigma against drug addiction and discrimination against these communities as a whole. Often in drug addiction treatments, this aspect is not put on a spectrum, but rather looked at as either being traumatized or not. Our solution aspires to consider multiple perspectives so that a more informed decision can be made about addiction treatment. There's certain features that our potential solution will encompass. For one, it should be affordable and accessible. Since low-income individuals are at a higher risk, the solution should be financially and geographically available for them. It should also be discreet. Since there does undeniably exist a stigma against drug addiction, this may cause some individuals to shy away from a solution in fear of social backlash. So the solution should ensure a degree of security and privacy so that this doesn't stop them from seeking out treatment. It should also be applicable for a range of drugs. Obviously, this is the most impactful, but we don't want to sacrifice depth for breadth, and a solution that works well for a specific drug type can be more beneficial than something that doesn't work as well, but encompasses a broader range. It should also be usable for a broad range of ages. Obviously, drug addiction can occur at any age, so we don't want to have that as a limiting factor. There should be no lasting side effects. We don't want to have any negative health effects on any individuals that may use this solution. The project should also be user-friendly. It should be very simple to use. We don't want to have a really steep learning curve or anything that's a complex user interface of any sort. And it should be implementable, especially at a large scale. We need this to be available to whoever needs it, not to limit it by only having a certain number of ways you can use it. Finally, there should be a high success rate. We need something that doesn't just work, we need something that works reliably and well.
To come up with a solution, we had to look at what has worked and what hasn't worked in the past. Now, how many of you have seen the ads like the one on the right? Just like a raise a hand or like a comment. Yeah, they're piling up. I know that when I was scrolling through YouTube at a certain time, I know I see it at least 3 times a day. This is an example of using social media to combat drug addiction. Specifically, the real cost ads ran from February of 2014 to November of 2016 to combat teenage tobacco use. And for a time, it worked. In over 2 years, they were able to prevent over 500,000 teenagers aged 11 to 19 from smoking and developing an addiction. However, as you can see in the graph, teens began vaping. Although teenagers were no longer smoking cigarettes, the drug evolved and new forms of becoming addicted and accessing nicotine evolved. And so the amount of people every year that vape and use Juuls is sharply increasing every year. Now, for our solution, we wanted something objective. With therapy and counseling, there needs to be a human element to it, but that introduces a bias in the process. One of the biggest issues we saw in our research is how drug addiction is treated as a binary option. It's either you are an addict or you're not an addict. But like most things in life, it's not black and white like that. Taking a look at the image, I know what you're thinking. That's just a box. And you're not wrong. It is a box. We wanted our device to look very simple on the exterior so that it is very user-friendly. The device consists of a camera, a fingerprint scanner, an LED, and a power switch. Now we wanted to use something similar to how an iPhone can scan PDF or scan documents and convert it into a PDF file. So that's what we would use our camera for. And because this is utilizing PET scans and medical items, we wanted something for the patient's confidentiality and how to securely store their information on the device. So we thought of a fingerprint scanner connected to an Arduino, and to code it for only to access files that are related to the patient and the physician themselves. So only those 2 people would have access to specific documents. So our device will intake a PET scan, analyze its brain activity and the amount of available receptors that we saw earlier, and store that information and put it onto the spectrum of how severe the disorder is. The device should produce 2 results, a file for the physician with suggestions regarding potential treatments, and the other should be a patient's file that will break down all of the medical jargon that a person can hear in an office so that the user can understand their own disorder on a basic level.
Okay, so then let's talk about our general timeline for this project. So next semester, we're thinking around January, we're going to focus on research first, considering this project is based on the idea of learning about PET scans and different addiction levels based on PET scans. And we are no professionals or undergraduate students, so that's going to be very research-based. We're thinking February to March will be focused on building the components of the box, as well as programming the Arduino to do some of our coding and incorporate some of our research and display results. And then April to May, hopefully combining these elements that we've made into like one functional item. Now, depending on how next semester goes, this could just be all virtual, or maybe we get to do some in person. We're not sure about that. So after we've built this device, we then have to figure out how to implement it. And so since our device is based on a PET scan that already exists and is an extension of it in a very specific situation, there are 2 things to consider. A, that this is a bioengineering device, so it has to follow FDA regulations. And B, that this is a new type of device that is a diagnosis tool that will be used in rehabilitation centers. So both require, with the use of a PET scan, so both require like specific qualifications in order to be implemented. So first, we have to go through FDA regulations. There are 3 types. Class 1, which is low risk, Class 2, which is moderate risk, and Class 3, which is high risk or no preterite. So class 2 moderate risk is based on the idea that your product is based on another product that's already on the market, already safe, already proven useful, and can be implemented. That is probably the route we would probably go, considering our device is an extension basically to a PET scan. So we figure it would probably go to the 501(k) route, which is where you prove that it's just connected to or based on a device that's already on the market, and then you get FDA clearance. From there, we would then probably attempt to get a patent for the device and contact medical professionals, maybe at UTD doing research, maybe in rehab facilities or in hospitals around the area, to try to get testing and experimentation done to implement it to see if this is effective and it works and it makes a difference. From there, we have multiple options on where we could go with the device if it proves to be exceptional and working. However, we are not there yet, so we're not for sure what we will do afterwards. Obviously, this is a long process, so we don't want to make any decisions too early and get ahead of ourselves.
So we talked a lot about the gravity of drug addiction, the magnitude of the issue, but we want to make something clear. Our product doesn't aim to wipe out drug addiction. That's not really realistic, but what we do want to do is take a more holistic approach to treating addiction, looking at addiction from both a behavioral aspect as well as a neurological one. And we want to put drug addiction on a spectrum. Like Anna and Teresa said, we're so used to looking at addiction like either a person is addicted or they're not. But I mean, we treat cancer in different stages because we see the levels of effect it has on our body. So why don't we do the same with drug addiction? So the brains of people who have been driven to addiction eventually succumb to the temptation of euphoria, but that's not because of weakness or lack of integrity, but rather due to feeling suffocated in a constant state of pressure and tension. Our solution strives to allow an addicted person to better understand their own brain to rid themselves of this suffocation. Thank you.
Wow, that presentation really, oh my God, I had a pun in my head. Anyway, great presentation, guys. Fantastic work. I really want to have a pun. Okay, so does anybody have any comments, questions, concerns? Anything they want to talk about?
I just wanted to say that I really liked how you guys were thinking about using like the Arduino board and trying to test it out. I think it's a really great approach, and I really love the issue. So great job.
I actually wanted to ask, is your device going to be primarily used in a clinic, or is it going to be something that like the consumer has? I would think probably clinic, but I wanted to ask anyway.
Yeah, so probably clinic, because like we said, I mean, the whole objective is to put it into layman's terms. Like there is a really shallow point of like knowing what your brain's like. We have the technology to know what our brain does and like observe it, but if the person themselves doesn't really understand what's going on, like it doesn't seem like it's having the effect it could. So like if it was put in a clinical office, I feel like Jenna, you want to add something?
I was gonna say, if I can jump in here, our idea is the idea, you know, when you go to the doctor and you get a diagnosis, like here is your problem. Our goal is to be, you know, that piece of paper you get explaining everything about it.
Right.
Our goal is to make something similar to that, considering drug addiction is one of those few diseases that doesn't get the same treatment as others. Our point is to objectify it, to treat it as a medical diagnosis, so there's less stigma. And so the point is to be able to show a person what's actually happening rather than going into a room and feeling shameful about how they are or their problem. So if they see that like a doctor is going to treat it medically, maybe they will approach it in a different way as well.
Exactly. And like we really want to get rid of that stigma. It's like, oh, they're addicted. It's their choice. Like they're addicted by choice. It's like maybe they like whether they started by choice or not, like their brain is neurologically altered now, and it's harder than just hop off it, you know, like it doesn't work that way. And so with like putting it in a clinic, it makes it easier for like doctor and patients to have like that streamlined communication.
That's really important. Thank you. Like, yeah, like getting rid of that stigma. I love how you guys are really trying to combat a social problem with like an engineering solution and then also help a lot of people. That's really awesome. So I know Krithika has a question.
Hi guys, I really like your idea. And again, once again, like it's a very like important thing to like find a solution to this problem. My question is that I know this is mainly something to think about for next semester, but how exactly are you guys going to test your device to see how effective it is?
So, do you guys want to, or okay, I'll take it. So
you can start.
Okay, sure. This would be okay. Never mind. So, yeah. So our idea was like we kind of cut that part out of our general timeline. We did have like a little bit of info about like patents and stuff, but before like we need to test it, and we can't really use PET scans like off the internet, mostly because they're like Google images with like 3 pixels in them, and also because like people don't put that information out there, right? So we'd actually probably have to go into like a lab at UTD and talk to a researcher or like a researcher who's working with neuroimaging and like see if they have any PET scans we could analyze. So yeah, or even like a doctor's office or like a clinic and be like.
And if I can jump in here, this just happens to be with our luck of like who we are, but we have several contacts that we like know, like teachers who we feel like who have mentioned being able to help. And I also do a shadowing weekly through UT Southwestern. And so we've considered talking to them about implementing this since they are they have a lot of addicted patients and they actually deal with that a lot, especially in the emergency room. So we have our options. It's really going to be about networking and seeing who's willing and who's not. And that's kind of going to be part of the process, we think, the next semester.
That's great. And that's great that you guys have already like thought of the testing aspect of this. My next question was going to be, do you think you guys will have enough time next semester to adequately test everything?
Yeah, I can take this one. That was actually the main problem that we had when we first started researching this, because we wanted to actually perform like a new scan, and then we were like, that's totally impossible. We are like first and second years in college, it's not going to happen. So this is actually kind of the scaled down version because we're just analyzing a PET scan. And so there's already different languages out there. I've already started researching on how it's actually going to function. And so using like Python, there's different coding. There's a way to code it through Python where, as I mentioned in the slides earlier, that when your iPhone uses your Notes app to like take a picture and scan a document and convert it into a PDF file, they're using Python in that method. And so we wanted to take that kind of how we look at a PET scan image, convert it and analyze it that way. And that's, I feel like this is going to be the trickiest part of how we're going to code it. Most of the circuitry and the electronics part is kind of out there already, and so they're easy to find. It's just a matter of coding it and making sure that it analyzes correctly. And yeah, so I think that's one of the biggest problems. So it is going to be a challenge.
I do want to add though, we did also accept the fact that we might have to alter this project like since the beginning, because we even went really ambitious in the beginning and said we were going to make a treatment that affects neurotransmitters in the brain, which was way too ambitious for a group that would require like medical experience for a long time. So we have accepted like there might be alterations made along the way, but our general idea is around this, and we can definitely make a scanner and at least make a scale and spectrum, even if we don't get to per se saying the level of addiction or going in depth on all types of drug addictions, and maybe even just stick to one. That's going to be as we start making it and processing and doing research. But again, we are going to be focusing on that next semester.
And another things that we were thinking, like, because there are lots of different drugs out there that people get addicted to, and we haven't started like actually building our product or like really, I mean, like we really have to go in deep with the research on this one. So like looking at how different drugs affect the brain, like the PET scans. So I guess like if we don't get to do exactly what we want to, a little bit of a watered down solution would be like us looking at one type of drug instead of like the variety of drugs like we wanted to. So yeah, that's one part of it too.
Thank you so much, guys. And I know you guys will accomplish whatever you set out to do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, seriously, that like it sounds like you guys thought of everything, which is really cool. Also, I feel like those PET scans would be a really interesting machine learning problem. That's all I'm saying. As a CS major, I'm just like, ooh, image classification, maybe. I think it's time to head off to our last presentation. So, any final remarks?
Just thank you. Thank you guys.
Wanted to say I'm disappointed Caitlin couldn't come up with a pun for our presentation.
I really wanted to. I really wanted to.
It blew her mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. That really like filled the void in my heart for that pun.
Sarah really making me look good as always.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you guys.
Great, and the next team we have coming up is Fair Apparel, our final team of the night. So it's going to be a really good one. So when y'all are ready, turn on your cameras, share your screens, and let's go.
All right, let me share my screen. All right, can y'all see my screen?
Yep.
All right, cool. All right. Hi, everyone. We are Fair Apparel, and we will be doing our project on fast fashion. My name is Ashani Chowdhury, and I'm a junior majoring in computer science. I'm the advanced track participant in the group. I've previously been part of ACM projects. I'm currently part of UT Design, building a test-taking portal for a nonprofit with a team, and I've done a few hackathons this semester. On the side, my hobbies include watching countless docuseries, cooking, and being part of the university choir.
Hi, my name is Nityashri Sapati. I'm a sophomore majoring in computer science. I participated in my first competition a couple weeks ago and learned a great deal. My two favorite hobbies are to play tennis and to bake. I'm really excited to introduce our project proposal to you all.
Hello, my name is Kim Ngo, and I'm a sophomore majoring in computer science. I'm heavily involved in Comet Life as their head of marketing, and recently my team at WeHack won a couple of challenges. My passions include painting, social media, and sustainability.
Hey guys, my name is Lainey and I'm a freshman majoring in computer science. I'm really interested in the intersection of technology and activism and would love to dedicate my future career to something in this arena. And in my free time, I really enjoy baking, hiking, and flying. So to kick us off, I can give you a little bit more information about fast fashion. So for those of you that don't know, fast fashion is a term used to describe clothing that's rapidly manufactured by mass market retailers and sold cheaply to consumers to allow them to keep up with trends. And the term was originally coined in the 1990s by major retailer Zara. I'm sure you all have heard of Zara before, with a mission statement that promised consumers that it would only take 15 days to get runways from designers' minds into affordable garments for everyone to purchase. And I'm sure you guys all know some pretty common popular fast fashion brands such as H&M, Forever 21, Topshop, Missguided, Fashion Nova. And these brands tend to offer clothing weekly or daily with hundreds of new styles that's often very trendy and it's made out of low quality material.
Traditionally, in the past, there have been 2 fashion cycles each year. However, due to fast fashion culture, that has increased dramatically to approximately 50 cycles each year, if not more. This results in a surplus of poorly made clothes that often ends up in landfills.
Now, one of the difficult things about fast fashion is the impact that it has on the workers making the clothes. In the United States of America, over 97% of the fast fashion goods purchased here are manufactured overseas, mainly in countries such as India, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Malaysia, and China. And out of 40 million workers, actually 85% are women and 168 million are children. These workers have to work for extremely low minimum wages that pale in comparison to the living wages in their countries. Their work days tend to be crazy long at 14 to 16 hours, 7 days a week, where they're often denied food, breaks, water. So generally very tough working conditions. And due to the socioeconomic and political structures of these countries, these workers often don't have many other options for employment. So they can't simply leave their jobs and go find work that's more suitable. Now, this employment can be very dangerous. This is working in these factories. Workers are exposed to a lot of toxic chemicals used in fabric dyes, and prolonged exposure to these chemicals can lead to respiratory issues, health issues, and just are generally very bad for the workers. Additionally, management often cuts corners in order to minimize their costs, leading to buildings not being kept up to code. So the actual factory buildings that these workers work in can be very dangerous. This can be seen in Bangladesh in 2013, where 1,129 garment workers were actually killed after a factory collapsed. This was following multiple notices of crumbling walls and an official order to shut down the building due to the fact that it wasn't kept up to code. But unfortunately, it still fell down. Fast fashion is also very difficult on the environment. And I want to just say quickly that fast fashion has a much larger impact on the environment than what we're going to actually discuss in this project. But for the purpose of our scope, we're going to focus mainly on fabrics, the washing of clothing, and throwaway culture. So the type of fabric used in fast fashion garments is really important to consider because most commonly, polyester is used in fast fashion garments. It can be found in 60% of all fast fashion garments. Polyester is derived from fossil fuels, so that contributes greatly to global warming. And there are more natural alternatives such as cotton, but cotton uses a ton of water and pesticides in its farming. It takes roughly 5,200 gallons of water to produce about 2.2 pounds of cotton. So it's extremely wasteful when these clothes just get thrown away after a couple of wears. Also, with manufacturers that prioritize rapid production over efficiency, lots of fabric is actually wasted during production. Another aspect of fast fashion that negatively impacts the environment is how clothing is washed. So the toxic dyes used to tint fabrics get into waterways, which can cause damage to aquatic life and lead to water pollution. The fast fashion industry is actually the second largest polluter of clean water globally, following agriculture. Additionally, the clothing sheds microfibers, which contributes to the amount of plastic in the ocean and can cause death to aquatic animals if it's ingested. Also, fast fashion overall just greatly impacts, kind of reflects our throwaway culture in our society. Like Kim mentioned before, there used to be 2 to 3 seasons of fashion, and now there's 50 to 52. So clothing isn't really built to last. It's built to be purchased, worn a few times, and simply discarded. So garments that are fast fashion are typically worn 7 times on average before they're just thrown away, and 85% of those garments are sent to landfills.
At the rate the fashion industry is going, resource consumption is set to triple by 2050. This kind of overconsumption of resources is something that our planet Earth is not set to handle, and it is not sustainable in the long run.
So looking at current statistics, it can be easily determined that the fashion industry is the second most harmful field to the environment, after the oiling industry. There are 3 major ways that fast fashion as a whole affects the environment: overconsumption, water pollution, and usage of synthetic materials. Overconsumption is when consumers start increasing the quantity of clothes they buy every year. It was noticed that from 2000 to 2014, consumption of clothes increased by 66%. This, in return, meant more apparels were thrown away after less uses in order to keep up with the current trends. In addition, clothes which have not yet been sold in stores are also thrown away. When shops throw these clothes away, they are actually being burned away. It shows that 80% of clothes end up in landfills and that only 1% of these clothes actually get recycled properly. The goal is to increase secondhand consumption, which would save $15 million in average.
Between the years of 2000 and 2014, the average consumer bought approximately 60% more clothes, but they kept each individual garment about half as long. This can be attributed to fast fashion, whether they threw it away because it was no longer in style, but also it could have been thrown away due to the poorly made and low durability of the clothing. Before these consumers throw away these clothes, they often consider options such as fixing the clothes, giving it to someone else, or donating it to charity or a thrift shop. Usually the most popular option is donating to charity or secondhand stores. However, if you look at statistics, most people do not shop at secondhand stores. In a typical thrift shop, clothes only have a shelf life of approximately 4 to 5 weeks. If a piece of clothing is not bought after that time period, it is packed up and thrown away into landfills. Because a lot of people don't shop at secondhand stores, as a result, a lot of clothing at thrift stores end up thrown into landfills, and most people don't realize that by donating their clothes, it often has the same environmental impact as if they just threw it into the garbage in the first place.
So the second way that fast fashion affects the environment is through water pollution. When the manufacturers are done producing a set of apparels, they end up dumping untreated toxic wastewater into the rivers. As you can see in the top left-hand corner of the slide is a picture of how the dyed wastewater looks entering the rivers or bodies of water. 20% of the industrial wastewater is from textile dyeing treatments. In addition, when water gets dumped into the nearby bodies of water, it has microplastics which are almost impossible to biodegrade. As you can see in the diagram on the bottom left corner, about 35% of the microplastics are from this industry. When this wastewater gets dumped into rivers, it ends up harming aquatic life, which then continues to harm up the food chain, which indirectly harms humans. Water is very essential in cotton production as well. About 20,000 liters of water are used to produce 1 kilogram of cotton. This usage cuts down availability of scarce resources even further and has drastic environmental effects. For example, the Aral Sea, which has been completely desertified due to the production of cotton, drained the area of water. Not only does the increased water consumption for clothing affect the environment, but it also starts making the water very scarce. And 20,000 liters is about enough water consumption for 2.5 years for the average human. The goal is to recycle apparels to reduce the amount of water used to produce new clothing.
According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the majority of microplastics in U.S. waterways is from fibers and lines. On average, 70% of microplastics in U.S. waterways overall are made up of textiles and fibers from clothing. As the fashion industry keeps going, that percentage is projected to increase.
So the third way that fast fashion affects the environment is through synthetic materials. Looking at the top left corner of the slide, we can see a diagram which illustrates that the fabric production step in fast fashion affects the climate the most. Synthetic materials like polyester or polyamide and etc. are common materials listed on the tags of a shirt. Each of these materials are very harmful. For example, polyester is made from petroleum, hard coal, limestone, and natural gas. This usage of oil is again affecting the environment very negatively. In total, about 1% of the oil produced is used for the fashion industry. In addition, production of these synthetic materials releases about 10% of the world's CO2 emissions, which is about 3 times more than sustainable materials like cotton. In comparison, the fashion industry releases more CO2 than international flights and the sea shipment traffic combined.
As a testament to how carbon-intensive polyester production is, according to MIT, polyester production in 2015 alone for textiles produced about 700 billion kilograms of greenhouse gases. This is equivalent to about 185 coal-fired power plants.
So Lainey, Kim, and Nithya have all talked about CO2 emissions, water pollution, and how fast fashion has affected our industry and as well as us as consumers. Now we're going to talk about what solutions we initially came up with and what solution we eventually arrived at. So while plotting some of our solutions and eventually coming to our final solution, we came across some overlapping concepts. So one particular solution we came up with was creating a database of clothing with their respective dyes using AI, an app that connects various thrift stores with nonprofits for homeless, a device that hooks up to a phone and identifies the material of the clothing, something similar to a fabric scanner or biotechnology or computer vision, as well as blockchain technology to track the clothing through the supply chain process. Eventually, we came across a conglomerate solution that would bring all components of our 4 solutions together. So the initial concept is that people will want to donate their specific clothes to local thrift stores. We will be partnering with local thrift stores in the DFW area. We do not know how big a scope this project will expand to, but we do hope to remain in the DFW or local Plano area even. And next, they will have a device that will be hooked up to a smartphone to identify the fabric material. As I mentioned before, this will either be a tactile sensor or computer vision or something of the sort. In fact, I got a Grow starter kit for Arduino a few weeks ago because I won it from a hackathon. We could possibly use that. Very excited. So eventually, after the device identifies the fabric material, they will then send it to a thrift store, and the thrift store will place tags on the clothing. And while the thrift store places tags on the clothing, the user will be able to see how much water pollution and CO2 emissions were created by designing the piece of clothing. So they'll be able to see how much initial CO2 emission and water pollution was created, and then once the article of clothing is tagged and it is bought by another person and handed down through a chain of people, they'll be able to see how much water pollution and CO2 emissions they prevented by donating their clothes. So they'll be able to see how much was caused by buying the clothing, and also by how much good they did by donating the piece of clothing. And as the piece of clothing is bought by other people, it will be tracked with blockchain technology. Now, I know some of you may be wondering what blockchain technology is. You've probably heard it in terms of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency that doesn't use a centralized bank. So blockchain essentially uses distributed ledgers or databases, and it doesn't have a centralized database, and everything is distributed out so that the supply chain process is more transparent and you can see more of what's going on there. And so the idea is with fast fashion is because the supply chain process is so expedited in fast fashion, we want to use blockchain technology to bring more transparency to the process, as well as see or calculate how much pollution is created by the article of clothing. Now, this is our general timeline. We do realize we have some ambitious requirements such as AI, blockchain, all these terminologies. So we are currently in the requirements phase, and there are 4 software developmental phases that we'll be going through. And this requirements phase will last until January 2021, or at least that's the plan. And throughout this winter break, or hopefully this winter break up until we come back for school, we want to talk to mentors. We want to learn the technology surrounding blockchain, AI. We want to research more about fast fashion, even though we've exhausted fast fashion and we've researched so much already. And then once we come back in January 2021, we want to design the actual project, and we hope that the design process will last up until April 2021. This will involve several components, such as creating the device that will identify the fabric material, as well as trying to create the blockchain technology, as well as integrating the AI. Not only that, we want to talk to local thrift stores in the area, whether it will be in Plano or in the DFW area. So there are several parts that need to be integrated with one another. However, we will be dividing and conquering. And eventually we want to implement this specific product in April of 2021, and implementation will probably take a couple of weeks. And then finally, we will get to testing. From April to May of 2021, it will probably take a couple of weeks because we want to ensure that we deliver the best product possible and that it really creates a change in the industry. Now, we would like to offer some closing thoughts to everyone. I realize that it's pretty late. We're the last presentation to go, but before you go for the night and for the rest of the weekend, we just want to say don't feel guilty for owning fast fashion. I know that the product we hope to create is more towards the consumer side. That's because we as college students are the consumers. So we know what the consumer's requirements are. We know what the consumer thinks like. We're not public legislators or startups. We don't have as much as funding, so we can't necessarily coordinate with companies to create a national or a global change. Now, given this, the ethical responsibility should be on the company at the end of the day. I realize that companies, they market to consumers in some sort of way. All of us did research where we realized that particularly companies like to use machine learning and AI to target their trends towards people in our age group from 18 to 26. And not only that, they like to target people with low self-image of themselves. So it is not our fault, it is not your fault as the consumer for buying into fast fashion and the trends that they create, because at the end of the day, they're using technology for probably the worst of humanity, whereas we're trying to use technology for the good of humanity. And so do not feel bad for owning fast fashion, and the onus should be on the company, not on us. And that being said, do what you can within your power to create change. As I said before, don't throw away your articles of fast fashion. Don't get rid of them. Continue to wear them out, and then when they get torn or ratty, then you can probably discard of them in a very safe, environmentally conscious manner. But until then, please start buying secondhand clothing. Research into more sustainable brands. The most particular thing you can do is research into what sort of fabrics you'll be using. As Lainey mentioned, polyester is derived from fossil fuels. You'll probably want to stay out of fossil fuels and try not to buy fossil fuels such as polyester. But given all this technology, or given all this information, I know it can be very intimidating. However, we just want to say that any amount of change that you put towards staying away from fast fashion, buying secondhand clothing or sustainable clothing is good enough. Now, this concludes the end of our presentation. We would like to thank each and every one of you for coming out here tonight. I know it's Friday. I know Thanksgiving break is coming up soon, so I just want to thank you so much for your time. We would also like to thank Caitlin for creating the inaugural SWE Match program. This is an incredible program. Caitlin, I'm so honored to have been picked to be the advanced track participant. And yeah, I'm really proud of all the teams and what they've done so far. At this time, we would like to open up the floor to any questions anyone has.
Thank you so much, Ashani, for being an amazing participant and an amazing leader for your team. I really appreciate it. You guys, I mean, to all the participants, you guys make SWE Match what it is. So thank you guys all so much for putting in the work and doing all the research and everything like that. But I do want to just say, with your solution, fast fashion is going to be so last year. Hey.
There it is. There's the pun. There we go.
Yes. But okay, so does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns? Jenna does.
Oh, Jenna, hi.
Hello. I just want to say I think your project is awesome and it's super interesting. I've never thought about fast fashion before, so I'm really glad you're bringing it to everyone's attention. My question is, you said you're going to be getting in contact with thrift stores in the area. I was curious on how you planned on doing that and how you were going to manage you working with multiple thrift stores throughout this.
So far, we realized that may be a constraint on our project on how many thrift stores we're going to contact, whether it does go to that scope at all. However, I do plan on contacting certain mentors and certain connections of mine, such as professors at UTD. I also have other connections at certain companies around the country or even in the DFW area who may be able to help us with that. Unfortunately, contacting local thrift stores and sort of setting up that business deal will be a very it'll require a lot of business experience from us. So I do want to contact people with more business-related experience and mentors to help guide us through that process. Does that answer your question?
Yep, it all sounds awesome.
Yeah, just adding on to that, a lot of thrift stores nowadays are becoming more and more focused on sustainability. There are certain chain thrift stores such as Plato's Closet or Black and Brown that focus more on the consignment aspect of thrifting in order to promote sustainability. And so these types of stores would be better for us to contact because that's already a choice that their target customer base has in mind when coming to their stores.
Absolutely, what Lainey said.
Good thinking. Yeah, like y'all, I'm so glad that you guys put like thought into more than like the engineering part, but how your product is going to fit into the context of the world. So that's really, really cool. I do have an engineering question though. I wanted to ask what so these are tags, right? Like these are like tags you'll be creating that are kind of like, they'll probably be something like a barcode or something like that to keep track of where the garment is going. Is that going to be connected to the garment? Meaning, is that going to be like sewed into the garment or something like that? Or is it going to be more like a tag that you get at the store? And so when you buy the garment, you take the tag off? Like what was kind of the thought with that?
So the thought process with that is, so we haven't discussed or exactly like what details you want, whether it wants to be sewn in or anything like that. But the hope is that the tag stays on the clothing so that when it goes from person to person, so let's say I donate like a red dress to a very sustainable thrift shop. So the tag is on the clothing, the thrift shop puts the tag on the clothing, and then someone else buys that piece of clothing, stays with them for a while, and then it's donated to another person and the tag is still on there. So the tag is meant to track the piece of clothing throughout the process so that you can see how much water pollution and how much CO2 emissions you're preventing by donating the piece of clothing throughout that process.
Genius. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions?
Hi, I have a question. I really love your project and your idea, but I know at the end you guys said that the main problem is with the large corporations. So is there a reason why you guys chose to focus on letting the consumer know about the pollution that they created instead of the large companies that make the clothing?
So as I mentioned, one of our constraints is that we are not public legislators or startup companies. We don't necessarily have access to these large corporations such as Zara or Fashion Nova in order to create a sort of company-wide systemic change. And so that's why, and because we are consumers and we are undergrads, just with limited experience, we figured that by creating this sort of product, it would bring more awareness on a consumer level that would eventually reach to a systemic level. So it's sort of like a bottom-up approach where it's bringing awareness now, and then hopefully it reaches marketing capabilities of consumers and implements systemic change. But yes, that's a very good question on why, even though I said like the ethical responsibility should be on the company, why ultimately our product is focused on the consumer. And it's honestly because of constraints, because we don't have the power to necessarily contact Zara and be like, stop polluting waterways, stop creating less CO2 emissions. I wish we did, but unfortunately we don't.
At the end of the day, towards corporations, like most corporations don't really care about ethics, and we've already seen that like with the popularization of like sustainability, some companies have moved towards being a little more green. However, they're still not exactly being sustainable. So by informing the consumer can make smarter decisions, and if the company wants to keep making money, they will move in the direction of becoming more sustainable. So at the end of the day, money does talk. And if we can get the consumers to be more informed, then like Ishani said, it'll go towards that direction.
Yeah, and just to echo what Kim said, we can see also that in this industry, the supply very much is driven by the demand from consumers. And so consumers giving backlash to these companies for not making ethical decisions, for not making environmentally conscious decisions, it does promote change and it does push these companies to take on more responsibility. We can see this in H&M's fabric recycling initiative. With backlash from consumers, they implemented a program where some of their products could be recycled and reused. So we hope that in order, to do our best to address this problem, we can just promote that kind of awareness.
Absolutely. And if you guys were interested in any companies that are more into sustainable fashion, who are trying to move away from the fast fashion, you guys probably know about Patagonia. They have trucks that basically go around the company trying to mend clothing. And I believe they have a lifetime warranty on some clothing, even though Patagonia is very expensive. If you do have the money and if you are privileged enough to buy their clothing, I would highly recommend buying from a company like Patagonia.
I was just about to ask if you had any like suggestions for places to go for clothes. Thank you. Good plan. So it looks like Teresa has a question.
Oh, hi, Teresa.
Oh, hey, what's up? So I had a question about what kind of inspired y'all to do this. Was it because that more people our age, just speaking from my experience, I know like all of my friends, they love to go thrifting. Is that what something that inspired you guys? Because thrifting is on the rise right now, and it's not really like fast fashion that people are doing. It's more, oh, what thrift store did you hit up yesterday? Do you know what I mean?
I feel like Lainey might be able to answer this question better.
Yeah, absolutely. Just echoing what you said, we've definitely seen more people, seeing thrifting as trendy, which is great. We love to see that. And I think social media has really helped to kind of promote that, sustainability is cool and thrifting is cool and shopping secondhand is cool. And I think also it's important to recognize that this is a growing problem that gets worse and worse with every day. More and more clothing is being produced that will simply go to waste. The supply chain is extremely linear at this time. And so now is a really great time to address this because thrifting is becoming more and more trendy. It would be a great time for people to start to see how sustainability can be taken into their own hands, because when the problem feels really huge and unreachable, it's not very inspiring for people to want to make personal changes. But when you feel like your actions can have an impact, that will grow in and of itself.
And to echo what Lainey said, before we started the project, I didn't even know fast fashion was a huge thing. So we're trying to like bring awareness to it, but also this, and not just like pushing consumers or the industry in a certain direction. That's not our only point, because like not many people know. We were trying to also bring awareness to it as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
And Kritika has a question as well.
Hi guys, I just wanted to first of all say I love the aesthetics of your PowerPoint. I love the colors that you used and how uniform it was, and it looked really good. I actually had two questions. The first question I had was, so you guys mentioned that you were going to put tags on the clothing articles. I was wondering if you guys are going to, if you were planning on reusing the tags so that wouldn't create waste. And my second question was, how exactly are you guys going to test the effectiveness of your device and app, as well as the tags?
Hi. So great question. Yes, absolutely. We will be reusing the tags. Absolutely. We will be reusing the tags and not and be ethical or be sustainable about it. Now, as for how we're going to particularly test our device, well, as I mentioned before in the closing thoughts, each one of us owns fast fashion. We all use we all have fast fashion pieces in our closet. So or at least in my opinion, I think I'll probably be using pieces of like my own piece of my own closet to test the particular device and to see how well it works in displaying the water pollution or CO2 emissions from each piece of clothing. So yeah, I think we're just going to use articles from our closet from now, and then hopefully once it gets implemented on a business level, it will we can use other pieces of clothing to build up its sort of database and AI model.
Thank you so much, and I love your idea.
Oh, thank you.
That's great. So much thought was put into this. I'm so happy that this is a really great like problem, because it's something that I definitely relate to. I mean, I'm sure I'm wearing something that is from fast fashion right now. So this was really, really great information. Thank you guys so much. But if there are not any more comments or questions, I think we will close the event here. Anything else at all for anyone?
I think I just wanted to put out there that this was amazing. Like, I think every single project is phenomenal. I think you guys can really change the world with this, and I'm so fortunate that you guys are like the very first people to, make this program come to life. So great job to all of you guys, and I can't wait to see how the creation comes. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you so much, Maida. You're the best.
She really is, isn't she?
I also wanted to say, if you want to know more about how you can contribute to reversing climate change, there are so many things that you can do. I'm sure that not anybody would be super excited about being vegan, but that's a really big deal. That's something that you can do. You can shop at thrift stores. I mean, there are so many options where you can make an impact personally. So it's a big deal, and I really encourage everyone to do some Googling and watch some YouTube videos and use your mad engineering skills to, make a significant difference in this.
Definitely. We can all be doing small things to combat this huge problem. That is so true. You just got to find the ones that work for you, and then ultimately society will move that way too. And I love that. That's fantastic. That's a fantastic kind of closing thought for this is for all these problems, there are small things that each of us can be doing. So find those things, right? Yeah, so thank you everyone for coming. Let me put up, I have a QR code here with the website for signing in. Please do sign in if you haven't already. Sorry, my computer's going a little slow, 1 sec. Okay, can you all see that? Please do sign in if you have not already, but thank you everyone for coming. Yeah, presenters can sign in too. Yep. So yeah, and I just really want to thank the participants for being troopers this semester. It's the first time we did this. It's competition is a secret word. Send in here. Put that on the recording. That's fine. Yeah, so thank you so much to the participants. Y'all been troopers. Y'all worked so hard. I know it's kind of weird trying out a brand new program, kind of being my guinea pigs a little bit, and I really, really appreciate y'all are great. I love you guys so much, and I can't wait to see you guys next semester to see these projects really come to life. So thank you for coming. Thank you to the participants. Thank you for the SWE section for giving me a platform to do this. I really appreciate it. So have a great rest of your night, great weekend, great Thanksgiving break to all of y'all.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. Hope everyone has a great weekend and a great Thanksgiving break too.
So ready for a break? Oh, here, I'll stop the recording.